Okay, when Mao wrote this article, he was addressing conditions in China under what was then the Japanese occupation of China. It was prior to World War II, when Japan had invaded China in an attempt to seize control and establish a colonial power over Chinese society. And Mao was struggling with those people who were part of the Communist Party who didn't really have an objective understanding of how to analyze conditions so as to provide a correct material leadership in the struggle against the Japanese occupation. And he was drawing from the history of China, feudalist China. China, a large part of Chinese society was feudalist under, the various different dynasties where they had the monarchical system, society ruled over by emperors with, the masses of peasants producing the labor that empowered the emperors and the landlords and the gentry, etc. So he was explaining how the development of scientific knowledge evolved with the development of production in society, from different stages of material development of the economic system. From the more primitive systems, people's understanding of the world around them was limited by their experience in production, in working up the basic materials that they needed to survive. So when you have primitive means of producing for social needs, like just going in nature and gathering things from nature, like just picking fruit and digging up tubers and gathering carcasses that may have been killed by predatory animals, and then bringing those carcasses back to the settlement and dividing it up and eating it. That's not really an advanced form of economic life. So technology is very low. So with technology being very low, science or unscientific understanding of nature and the forces of nature is very low. So people tend to be more metaphysical in their thinking. They tend to attribute things in society and nature, etc., as metaphysical. These are forces of gods and spirits and different forms of nature gods that are the forces behind conditions in nature, because they don't understand scientifically how these forces work together to produce the different phenomena in nature, how plants grow, what causes the sun to set and rise, how planets are situated in in space, etc. So he was explaining that as societies evolve from these more primitive societies up to the more advanced industrial societies under capitalism, scientific knowledge evolved and technology evolved, so that man's intelligence or human beings' intelligence develops in at a corresponding rate of sophistication. So he was explaining that
you have 1 minute remaining.
From practice within our productive systems and other aspects of social development, our intelligence develops or our knowledge develops. So that was how he used the history of China to explain how people's knowledge or how different levels of knowledge evolved from a more primitive to a more advanced materialist understanding of society and nature, etc. So does that help?
Yeah, I think that was an important interjection from Comrade Sojourner. That provided a nice little background to what we're actually talking about, to put it in context, at least for me.
Yeah, thank you. That was good.
Helpful.
Okay, all power to the people. Hold on, let me call back and see.
Thank you for using GTL.
So part of the challenge with giving PE from inside the prison is that the little recorded lady interrupts us every 20 minutes. So she's coming right back.
That's my best friend.
That's your best friend?
Uh-huh.
I don't like her. I want to fight her. I'm a fighter if I catch her.
Yeah, me too. I'm being sarcastic.
I'm like strangely used to that voice for some reason. Like,
Really?
I'm used to her, but she always picks the most inopportune times
Yeah.
to interrupt. It's usually when someone's about to make like a really good point or provide clarity on something, and still hop in the conversation.
My theory is that they investigated at what point in the conversation approximately do things get intense or meaningful, and they decided to optimize their job. They're going to put the interruption at that point.
That's too real. You know, they was in the lab talking about at about 23 minutes and 14 seconds. This is right where people be having the breakthroughs. This is it. Man. Yeah, it's good to hear her voice because you know you're talking to a loved one, but it's like, what the, can you just for 1 minute, please?
I just said she's consistent. That's what I always say. She's always consistent. She don't have any favorites. And you get to the point, you know almost exactly when she's going to come in. You're like, yeah, she's about to come in. I don't have much time.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Is it Anaya? I love you over here with the highlight and the you're ready.
yeah, I got my Apple.
Hell yeah.
iPad with all the highlighted areas.
What about y'all on video?
Yeah.
Can y'all see each other?
Yeah.
I want to be on video.
I'm on my laptop, so that's probably it.
I'm currently.
Yeah, I probably should have used my laptop.
Welcome.
I'm out here sitting up in the car with my phone.
Ain't mad at you. Anaya, did you say you're on your phone?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can do it on your phone too, I guess.
From your phone, but you have to be in the app. She's not in the app because she has to bring Rashid in.
Yeah, I super appreciate that. Yes. Sorry, timing.
Jade is definitely going to inject some incitement into these studies.
Or annoyance, we'll see.
Okay, you were giving us the context of the what was going on.
Yeah, the historical context of this article and how Mao placed it in, trying to decide what was going on and why. So, diving into the article, I would like to begin with the first question. What is the difference between indirect experience and direct experience?
I guess one example of direct experience would be like touching a hot stove and being able to explain what that experience was like, as opposed to someone watching someone touch a hot stove. I could probably explain that experience and, what the person did, how they reacted, if they jumped back, but it still wouldn't be the same as having experienced that myself.
That's a good example of direct experience.
I feel like indirect would be like
indirect experience is what?
Just playing off of what was just said. I feel like indirect experience was someone just telling someone the stove is hot, and them not actually experiencing it themselves, but they got told that it was hot. But then they're not gonna really know what hot means though until they actually touch that hot stove.
Yeah, I think a really simple example is like with food. Like you could tell somebody what something tastes like, but it's nothing that's, it's not comparative to if you're actually eating the food itself.
And piggybacking off of what she said, I would say I guess indirect experience would be like explanation, and direct is actually like the physical, like you actually like when she said touch not stove, you actually touch not stove. But like the indirect would be like you visualizing it, like you actually just seeing the person doing it and then watching their reaction, and then you're explaining it to like other people what just happened.
Mm-hmm. And certain things, I think it's, like levels with certain things, even when you just directly experience it, it's so powerful that you can almost feel like you're directly experiencing it. Like, just things that are like painful or something like that. And you're seeing somebody's reaction and you're like, oh, I know that, I know that hurt, or I could just imagine that feeling. Because it's such a powerful, just indirect observation of it. You're like, wow, I almost feel like I was there, but it's definitely nothing that compares to actually being in it yourself. And I had another point, but I forgot it. Maybe it'll come back to me. I'm getting old over here.
Yes, you all have it. Yeah, you all have it pretty much summed up. The only distinction I would want to make is between what Comrade Garlic said and the examples that were given by Comrade Shu and Sojourner. Okay, indirect experience is, yes, a person not experiencing something themselves, but it's someone who has experienced something themselves explaining it to you. Like what you will read in a book about travel in another country, or somebody's explanation of an experience, say being burned by a stove. It's being informed through someone who has had direct experience of something that you have not had direct experience of. So you're getting a secondhand sort of set of information or ideas that explain to you something that took place that you didn't experience yourself. So that's just the specific distinction between direct experience and indirect experience.
It's like a secondary source.
Does that help?
That's a super helpful distinction. So like, it's kind of like in a relationship between a child and a parent telling that child, hey, don't do this because of these natural consequences or whatever, as opposed to having zero experience about that thing at all. It's more so coming from like, nah, because I used to sneak out when I was your age and this, that, and the other kind of thing. Right?
Right.
Yeah, I like to think of it too, like
if I may. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like to think of it too, is like whenever you read in a book and you're looking at the source materials and whether or not the source is a first-hand account or a second-hand account, of like some information. Like, are you reading something that someone was told something, or are you reading something from the person that experienced it themselves?
Yeah, that's an important distinction as well, and it kind of is a distinction that they make in law in the court, between hearsay and direct knowledge. If somebody testifies to something, they're usually required to have witnessed it or experienced it themselves, opposed to them repeating something that somebody else told them that they witnessed or experienced. So the value of informing somebody of something.
You're breaking up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, the value of informing.
The value of informing somebody, the credibility of it is greater when they experience something directly themselves, as opposed to them telling you what someone else told them. Because then the quality of the experience starts to break down, because you have what is in human experience, a person substituting their own perceptions for what someone else may have experienced that they didn't get the full experience of themselves.
That's interesting. Let me, for clarity, because I thought the distinction that you made earlier with what Comrade Garlic said was important, and I want to make sure I understand this. So what would it be? And if I'm getting ahead or off topic, just gather me up and bring me back. But what would it be then? I'm trying to think. Garlic said, okay, so the difference would be not, okay, as opposed direct experience would be the person who actually touched the stove, okay? And indirect experience would be the person who was informed of what that was like by the one who actually touched the stove. So what would it be just to observe someone doing something? Is that
not quite?
What is that?
My understanding is the distinction is an indirect experience, or rather, having indirect experience means I have experienced this before. Am I correct in that?
Not indirect experience. Direct experience would be you haven't experienced it.
Indirect
because you experienced it.
Indirect experience, just in general, is you being informed of an experience by somebody who actually lived there. So in any context where I actually did something, or I actually experienced something, I actually saw something, I actually lived in a given situation or environment, and I tell you about it, that's indirect. You are the recipient of indirect experience. The experience that you have of that event is indirect because you didn't participate in it yourself, but you were told about it by someone who did.
I get that part. I'm talking about what is the difference between being told of it and observing it? Because in the example I gave, the person wasn't told. Is that a different type of experience? Like
that is also indirect experience.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a distinction in how conveying the information through a particular source or a particular medium.
Okay.
So you're still being indirectly.
Observation can still be indirect experience.
Yeah, it can be direct experience actually if you observe the damage done and you say, okay, I know touching a hot stove will cause this type of injury, etc. But the actual feeling, you just observe what somebody else experienced. You can't really qualify how that that sensation actually was processed in this person's body unless you've been through it before. But yeah, it's still indirect experience in that context. It's direct experience to the extent that you are witnessing an event that took place and the context of it, etc. That is a direct experience. Depends on what aspect of that experience you're talking about.
Okay.
Does that confuse you, or does that make it clear?
No, that actually makes it clear, and I don't want to muddle it for anybody else. But I just the observation part threw me off.
That was helpful. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then think about.
Let me stray for just a minute because I want to give a broader context to the discussion so comrades really grasp what we're dealing with. Okay. The reason this discussion is so important and understanding this whole concept is important is because it informs us of how to solve problems. Understanding how we come to know things. In the human context, if you don't know something, you're not going to be able to change it. If you don't understand something, you're not going to know how to struggle with it to correct it. Say, for example, if you live in a house or you move into a house, but you don't know that windows are broken, the water's turned off, that you have a gas oven that may be turned on with the gas leaking, you have a rodent problem. If you don't know what the problems are in this environment, then you definitely will not have a safe environment, and you would not know how to correct that environment to make it safe. So you would have to develop a factual understanding of the conditions under which you are placing yourself and what needs to be done to bring those conditions into conformity with a safe environment that you want to have. So in any situation, it's important that the knowledge we receive is accurate. It accurately reflects the environment that we're in or the conditions that we're struggling with so that we can correctly change those conditions to produce the result that we aim for. So that's why it's important that we understand how we develop knowledge and how to accurately develop knowledge so that we have a true understanding of what it is we're struggling with, the conditions under which we're struggling, and what needs to be changed and how so that we can produce the environment that we want to produce. In the context of revolutionaries, we need to understand social conditions, world conditions, political conditions accurately so that we know how to change what needs to be changed and how to go about maneuvering within the conditions that exist to bring about the changes that we desire to produce the results that we are aiming for. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Yep.
Okay, with that said, what is the difference between perceptual knowledge and conceptual knowledge? And I'm open to comrades explaining, give me some ideas that illustrate it or give, a deeper understanding on what the differences are.
Okay, I guess I can dab at it.
Yeah.
So what I think perceptual knowledge is like kind of like a surface level understanding of a situation, or kind of like a preconceived notion of something. Like you see like what's happening, and you kind of like form an impression, or just like it's not, you haven't reached a deeper level of understanding of it, but like like you have like some like some form of knowledge around it, I guess. I don't know.
Like certain features of it, a certain aspect.
Yeah.
Mal gave a really good example, and I think it was on practice. He gave an example, and I think this is what Comrade Anaya is trying to say. I wish I could remember what exactly he said, but he talked about when you visit the city and you learn certain streets, or you go to the theater, or you go here, or you go there, and you that's kind of like your perceptual knowledge. But once you understand how all of those things fit together, and you're able to move throughout the city and go places and find your way, you start understanding it on a conceptual level. I know I messed up his quote. Like, that's probably nothing like what he said, actually.
I have...
Do y'all know what part I'm talking about? When he was like, as a tourist, when you go to the city, and it's like, okay, here's this, here's that, and you're perceiving that, you see it, okay, you can identify that, but you don't really know how the city fits together yet. Like, you couldn't get dropped off in one end and find your way to the other. But once you're able to understand it that way, then that's like a conceptual knowledge of the city.
So it would
Actually,
pretty much
that's
be
perfect.
like,
Hold on.
I was saying, like, couldn't it be like a way of like rational type of thinking? So like you don't necessarily grasp like what it actually feels like to walk around like these different cities, but you're gonna have a perception, like a feel of what you're about to get into, like if you were to walk through these cities or certain parts.
Okay, actually, Shu's explanation was a perfect summation of what Mal explained as perceptual knowledge versus conceptual, how perceptual knowledge develops into conceptual knowledge. Before you even enter an environment, when you have certain preconceived ideas about the environment, that is not knowledge at all. Those are preconceived ideas. Those are certain views that you may have beforehand. Perceptual knowledge is when you actually enter that environment and you begin to take in the features of that environment through your senses, your perceptions, your eyes, smell, taste, touch, hearing. You actually experience the environment and you start to see certain aspects of the environment. That is the perceptual stage. Basically, it's your experience with the environment or certain features of the environment through sense perception. Conceptual knowledge starts to develop as you take in the environment more and more and more. You gather more data, more information. You acquire a greater quantity of information from the environment. Then you start to make predictions. You start to be able to say, okay, this is a place that I know at this time these sorts of things are going to happen, and I like this environment here, and I predict that if I go here on certain nights, I will have this result. This is a good place that serves food that I like to eat, and this is when, there are not a lot of patrons in here, and I can go in here, eat and enjoy my meal without a lot of, traffic. This is a place that I can hang out on the weekends. You start to develop theories and ideas about the environment, how to make the environment conform to the things that you want, the way that you want to exist in the environment, what you're comfortable with, how to generate the things that interest you, and interact with people who you may be responsive to, or you like, or develop a social network, etc. So it's starting out with a surface knowledge that you develop just by observing an environment and starting to interact with the environment. That's the perceptual stage. The conceptual stage is when you start to develop theories, you start to be able to predict certain things in the environment, and you therefore get a deeper understanding of the internal nature and characteristics of the environment. Does that make sense to everyone?
I actually found the quote.
You have 1 minute remaining.
You see how she does?
Man.
You see?
She's
You
perfect.
see? I actually found the quote of Mal's that I completely messed up. And it starts, in the process of practice, man at first sees only the phenomenal side, the separate aspects, the external relations of things. For instance, some people from outside come to Yan'an on a tour of observation. In the first day or two, they see its topography, streets and houses. They meet many people, attend banquets, evening parties, and mass meetings, hear talk of various kinds, and read various documents. All these being the phenomena, the separate aspects, and the external relations of things. This is called the perceptual stage of cognition, namely the stage of sense, perceptions, and impressions. That is, these particular things in Yan'an act on the sense organs of the members of the observation group, evoke sense perceptions, and give rise in their brains to many impressions together with a rough sketch of the external relations among these impressions.
Thank you for using GTL.
You're welcome. This is the first stage of cognition. At this stage, man or woman cannot as yet form concepts which are deeper or draw logical conclusions. So that's what I was trying to quote with my ramblings about going to a town or something. That's what I was trying to say.
You did a pretty good
But
job.
I don't know.
You
Maybe
did.
You still got the point across. Your example was still good. You know it wasn't exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I like Mal because to me he's easy to understand, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I've read other theorists that aren't as plain spoken. That can be confusing.
My litmus test with people is like, I'll have them read Combat Liberalism, which is all of 2 pages. It's like 19 theses or 19 statements, right? That's my litmus test. And I'm about to organize with someone. I'm like, have you read this? What are your thoughts on it? Let's talk about it. And if they are really resistant to the things that he brings up, I'm like, we're not about to do prison abolition work. We're about to do ego work.
Yeah. Combat liberalism is a foundational piece.
Shit, I might have to print that out.
Hang on, I'm about to add Rashid back.
But yeah, now print it out. It's on Marxist.org too. It's real short. It's nice and concise, and it's like it makes so much. It's just so applicable to so many different things.
Yeah, I've read it a few times, but you just reminded me. I was like, and I have a printer now, so I'm trying to oh shit, I got a printer. I can print shit.
You better season me. Come on.
All right, we're back. Yeah, when I got cut off, you were reading a quote from Mal on perceptual and conceptual knowledge.
Yeah, because I wanted them to understand. Like, I knew what I was trying to say, but I thought Mal could say it better because he can, and he did. So.
And he did. I think there's a Ho Chi Minh quote where Ho Chi Minh's like, I don't write theory because Mao already wrote what I want.
Right.
So does everyone have an understanding of the difference between perceptual and conceptual knowledge?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
I'd like to think so.
Okay. How do we come to know anything?
think it's from a combination of things. I think it's from things that we've talked about already. Sometimes you experience it directly. Sometimes you observe it. Sometimes somebody tells you about it. Sometimes you read about it. And through all those experiences, when your knowledge goes from perceptual to conceptual, then that's when you have a grasp of that knowledge.
Yeah, practice and observation, I would say, basically. I agree with Comrade Sojourner.
Yeah.
I mean, same.
I just want to add on to that, environment has a great deal to do with this as well. So there's also like the conversations people have around you and the experiences you have, but then all of those are affected by where you at. Like Elon Musk in Africa, in South Africa, right? You know, having completely different conversations. I don't know. I'm going to stop talking. There's a lag here and I'm probably just mumbling.
Okay, well, the environment actually may be the thing that you are trying to develop knowledge of through your experiences, your perceptions, and from your continued experience and perceptions, you get a deeper grasp of the conditions, the contradictions in the environment, reach a state of what's called, cognition, which is just basically logical knowledge or conceptual knowledge. They're all the same thing. Yeah. Just by continuing to gain information, to observe, to interact with the environment or whatever the thing is that you are attempting to learn or that you're developing, an understanding and knowledge of. And just by taking in more and more information, you get a deeper and deeper understanding until, as Miles said, there's a leap in your understanding, your cognition, and you start to be able to gain a deep insight on the internal relations, the essence of a thing, and you can predict the results of it, the processes of it, how it works, how certain things will play out in a given situation. So you develop, what's called logical knowledge. This is how you come to know. All right. Does everybody understand?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Okay. How do we correct mistaken ideas? If we have ideas that are incorrect and they're proven to be incorrect, how do we correct them?
I would personally say, like, you have to analyze what was thought out and what was played out. So if I had an idea of, like, saying I wanted to get such and such done, then I would have to analyze what I'm doing and see where the flawed aspects of that idea come from. Or I could ask other people, say, will this be a good way to get this done? And you could ask other people as well, but that's just my way of thinking about it.
Let me ask, is that how you would solve your mistaken idea? Is that how you would prove to yourself, okay, I see that what I thought or what I believed about this thing or thought I knew about it is wrong? You think thinking about it, analyzing it, theorizing on it, do you think that's how you would actually solve having an incorrect understanding of something and then developing a correct understanding?
Not exactly. You probably have to go through with it first and then see what went wrong.
Exactly. That's the importance of practice in everything. And this is how you work through the stages of developing correct knowledge. Perceptual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, and then practice. You observe something, you develop certain perceptions about it, you develop a surface understanding of it. The more you experience it, the more you observe it, you get a deeper grasp until you can conceive of what the essence of it is, the actual nature, the internal relations, the internal consciousness, so that you start to develop ideas. If I use this or I do this, I think this will be the result. Or if I enter this environment and I try to do this, I think this will be the consequences. these are certain things I feel if I do in this environment will bring about certain changes that I want to accomplish. The only way you will know whether your theories, your conceptual ideas about the environment are correct or not is that you apply them. There's no other way to prove it. Now, if when you apply them, as the comrade says, you prove it wrong. Okay, you know what? It didn't work out the way I thought. So something was wrong in the way I analyzed this and the theory that I developed from what I thought was a correct conceptual understanding of the internal nature of this thing. You would have to go back to the drawing board. Like he said, analyze it, reevaluate it, go through more experience, gain more perceptual knowledge, reassess it, look for the errors that you may have made, but the only way that you will know whether you were wrong or right, in which you have now theorized again after you went through a larger process of experience and observation and perception, is you have to return again to practice. Without practice, you will never know whether something is correct or not. And the whole object of knowing something in an environment where your objective is to change it is to apply your concepts or your theories to practice. And once your practice proves correct, then you can build on that and evolve a higher state of practice. Go back to the drawing board, theorize again. Goes back to the drawing board, observe, gain perceptual knowledge, theorize, return back to practice. Is that a good understanding that I've given?
I want to add too, this is the litmus test for, are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you doing it for ego? Are you doing it for the right reasons? You know, that's been my experience.
Okay.
I guess,
yeah. I guess that informs what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. So we're going to, I guess, your ideology, what your principles are, what it is you want to accomplish. Before we arrive at that, though, we have to have a correct understanding of how we will bring about changes in any context, whether it's for good or for evil. And this informs how we can correct other people's practice if their motives are wrong.
I said EGO. Sorry if it sounded like I said evil. But yeah, no, completely.
All right. Is it better to have an open mind or to be opinionated, and why?
You know what I think? No, I'm just playing. For those who know me on the call. No, that's just a little jokey joke.
Obviously have an open mind, even though I have hella opinions too, though.
Yeah,
Well, I think for
scientific. Well, for scientific purposes, though, if we're trying to determine the correct practice, or I would think usually I would say, well, you need both, but I would think a scientist, and I guess what we're trying to do is become revolutionary scientists. We do need to have an open mind. I think we should be firm with our principles.
Right.
You know what we want. Our objective. We shouldn't be compromising in that way. But when we're presented with different information, I recently had to change my stance on something that I was very passionate about, and I had to self-crit because I was wrong. I was flat out wrong. And when we're presented with different information, with facts that prove the contrary, we have to be able to let go of our opinions when we're presented with facts, in my opinion.
I'm an opinionated motherfucker too, so I feel you. Everyone that's close to me knows I got hella opinions, but I try to be open-minded.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of what she was saying is there's a difference between opinions and principles. And I like that distinction because I think that was what I was trying to initially communicate, but I really like that distinction.
You can be an opinionated person with an open mind as well. Like, I think the best case scenario is to have a balance between the two. So like, okay, so this person may have, like I was saying earlier, like this person may have an idea and I might have an opinion on that idea, but that idea might work better than what I'm thinking. So like the reevaluation conversation we just had, practice and experience makes perfect for it. However, you can still have an opinion, but that opinion may not be right, but the idea may not be right. But if you put them together, then you might have a solid foundation. But it's all about building the foundation with the open-mindedness and with the opinions.
I think you have to be willing to let go of your opinions, though, if your opinions are proven to be incorrect. You know what I mean? Like, I think I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, obviously people, we have opinions on things. I mean, we just do. We're human beings. But I think some people, and I have been known to be one of these people, I'm working on this. It's like once I get something, once something is in my mind, then it's like, no, fuck that. That's the way it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
that's the Capricorn.
The scientific approach, like we can't. Listen, we cannot be like that though, because here's the thing. As we are presented with new information, things that are proven to be correct or incorrect, we have to be able to let go of those opinions and adjust to that new information that has been proven to be correct. Otherwise, how do we improve upon our practice and get rid of bad ideas if we're wedded to our opinions? You know what I mean? I think it's human nature to have opinions, but we can't be wedded to them to the point to where when we're presented with new information, we're just like, no, I don't care what anybody shows me. This is how I feel. Like, I think that's incorrect.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful analysis.
I don't think we would be revolutionaries if we didn't have strong opinions. But what we have to remember is that you always have to have your mind open to consider that it could be some additional factors that you have not considered. Like, did you form your opinion from facts or just from conjecture, just because you think you know what you know? But
your feelings, that's a big thing, if you're like me. I can be subjective sometimes, and, feelings will lie to you, and feelings change. We can't base our work upon things that fluctuate like that. So, you know what? I will end this whole call.
Why'd you do that?
My husband picks on me, y'all.
Who, me? I would like to point something out, a contradiction that I think is important under the circumstance. Typically, people who are willing to stand up to oppression, who are fighters, who oppose abusive conditions, are highly opinionated people. They're people who have a strong passion, a strong perception about views that they hold, and they're willing to stand up against oppressive conditions that contradict those views. So they have a deeply ingrained sense of, I have certain ideas and I'm not going to change them regardless of you trying to use oppressive methods or you bringing about repressive conditions to try to force me to submit. So there's something of a contradiction between the types of people who are drawn to this type of work, but the scientific open-mindedness that's necessary to be able to adjust our observation and our tactics and our approaches to methods of changing the conditions that we're fighting to end, which is the oppressive system. Do you all understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sort of what I was trying to speak to earlier with ego. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think because I can't see when people's hands are raised because I'm I'm on the phone, so I'm probably talking over people and interrupting people. Like I said, feel free to gather me. Go ahead, comrade.
No worries. I was gonna say that. Well, for the record, we're not doing the hand raising thing. I'm sorry if we are, and I just didn't pick up on it, but I didn't even notice. But
I don't know. I don't know if we are or not. I just know that I can't see it.
No worries. So I was going to say that I think a big piece of that is ego. Like when we get into revolutionary work, we generally do it because of genuine knowledge on it or direct experience relating to oppression. And so when we get into it, we're very fiery. And a lot of that fire is opinion based. A lot of that fire is ego based. And a huge aspect of sustainable organizing that I'm learning right now. This is a crash motherfucking course is you really have to like kill your ego, snatch that little bitch up and be like, what are you doing to me right now? Stop. I want to do this because I really genuinely care about these things, not because I care about how I look, not because I care about getting in the last word, not because I care about being right, but because I am dedicated to the pursuit of learning what the correct line is. Even if it's not the one I came in here thinking, I might have come in being, I'm an anarchist, I'm an anarcho-communist, I'm a whatever, and that might not be the thing by the end of our journey. It takes ego removing that ego to be like, okay, let's really look at the facts instead of just how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful point.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
I had to really work with Rashid on his ego when we first met.
Oh, you did you? Uh-huh.
You wouldn't know it now.
I think I kind of retreated to the background and let you learn on your own. Nudge you a little bit and then retreated and let you see, okay, you know what, maybe my opinion is a little bit wrong.
Right.
I think y'all like each other.
A little bit.
I love it. I love that.
Okay. Actually, we've covered some of the questions and some of the discussions we already had that are to come.
You have 1 minute remaining.
No.
What holds a higher position, theory or practice? Hey, Shu, if you would contact Pumpkin for 50 and put it on there for us.
Okay.
Which holds a higher position, theory or practice? That's the next question. Hold on, let me hang up and I'll be right back, comrade.
Right.
I said practice hands down.
Thank you for using GTL.
Y'all saying practice, final answer?
Yeah.
I think it's a trick question.
I think it is too.
I think it's a trick question. I think it's both.
I think it takes both, but like if I think practice is more important because it's like you can get,
and that is true.
You can get all the information you want. You can be given every right information, but if you don't do anything with it, it's useless.
Because I think you form.
I think we see a lot of that
practice unconsciously. You're just putting it, you're putting it into practice just in your doing. You just haven't like necessarily thought about it and, come up with this like clear concept, but you do what you do for a reason and with some type of rationale in mind and some type of, like I'm going to do this way. Like when we do serve the people, sometimes people don't want to get with the program. I'm like, okay, it's a assembly line. The bags are on this end. We put the cereal here. We put the peanut butter here. We put it next to the jelly. And we do the bread. So whoever gets peanut butter gets the jelly. Whoever gets cereal gets some milk. It's a line. That's just what we put into practice, right? You didn't necessarily say, this is a theory, but what makes sense logically that later formed that theory that it works better if we do the assembly line. He's coming back.
I thought I had him. Oh, okay.
Okay, so which holds a higher position, Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
What you doing with the
Somebody said something?
practice?
We were just getting ready for Final Jeopardy. We're trying to figure out.
Well, that's how to be a millionaire.
Oh,
I think what Comrade Garlic said made a lot of sense though, because I think one of the problems with the left, you see a lot of people who know theory, and that's all they do, want to talk about theory and debate people on some silly ass minute point, that happened 100 years ago, and who was right and who was wrong, but they haven't stepped out of their house to hand out a flyer, or they haven't organized anything outside. So I think, unless it's a trick question, if we do have to just pick one, obviously I think practice would trump theory.
yes, it does. Practice, as we had discussed earlier on, practice is what determines or proves or disproves the correctness of your theory, of your conceptual knowledge. So you can have in your head what you want, you can believe what you want, you can think what you want, but until you apply it in practice, then you have no actual factual knowledge that what you think or believe is actually correct. And practice will always prove whether you're right or wrong. Like scientists say, the rat is always right. You can theorize about what a rat will do all day, but until you create that experiment and put them in experimental conditions and observe what they actually do under that experiment, then you would not know what that rat actually is going to do. So practice is the determinant of what is correct or incorrect, above theory all day.
Thank you, Garlic.
I love that explanation.
Okay. So what determines a given person's thinking in society?
Class.
I
What
didn't
determines
hear the question, all of the questions.
What determines a given person's thinking in society?
Oh,
Your class perspective.
I feel like the superstructure has a lot to do with like thinking patterns, essentially.
You said like what determines a person's thinking pattern?
Yeah.
I'd say probably the environment and observations that they have experienced.
yeah, I think experience plays a large role.
Yeah, experiences, environment.
What experience?
Go ahead, my bad.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay.
I want you all to weigh in as much as you want, and then we can consolidate the ideas and arrive at some deeper understanding and analysis. So go ahead.
Sure. Okay. I just wanted to add in a piece. Basically, I agree with the examples everyone else was giving, because I think a lot goes into what makes us the thinkers that we are. But I think too, neurologics, is that a word? Whoa, I just made it. Whatever, it don't matter. Neurologics has to do with this. Like, for example, I have several autistic or neurodivergent comrades, and I myself, and I'm an autistic comrade. So a lot of times, particularly the patterns too, not necessarily the theories that we agree upon, but the thinking patterns and how we arrive